I sat quietly at the table beside my 7-year-old grandson during my son's second wedding. Out of nowhere, the boy squeezed my hand tightly and whispered, "Grandma, I want to leave right now." Startled, I asked softly, "What's wrong?" His small body trembled as he leaned closer and said, "Grandma, you didn't look under the table, did you?" A chill ran through me. Slowly, I lowered my eyes, then froze. Without a word, I gripped his hand and rose from my chair. Together, we walked out in silence. If you're hearing my story, I'm glad you're here. Please like and subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I want to see how far my tale of revenge will travel. Earlier that evening, I had been sitting in the heart of the wedding hall, a grand ballroom glowing with candlelight. My little grandson Leo sat beside me, the child I love more than life itself. It was my son Alex's wedding day, his second marriage, this time to a woman named Ava. While adults laughed and mingled around us, Leo quietly pushed his red toy car back and forth across the crisp white tablecloth, lost in his own world. Watching him, my heart melted. I gently adjusted the bow tie at his collar, a tender act that stirred the memory of his late mother, Maria. Her gentle smile still lived within me, fresh as yesterday. The soft notes of the jazz band floated through the room, mingling with the clinking of glasses and low hum of conversation. White roses adorned every table, silver plates gleamed in the candlelight, and waiters moved like dancers, refilling glasses and clearing dishes. My eyes searched for Alex. He was busy moving from guest to guest, lifting his glass in cheerful toasts, his smile radiant yet shadowed by the loss he carried since Maria's passing. Across the room, Ava posed effortlessly for photographs, her gown shimmering with beads, her smile flawless, too flawless, almost as if nothing in the world could touch her. I watched her, a strange heaviness stirring in my chest. I tried to brush it away, telling myself it was only my heart being too sensitive. At our table, an elderly couple turned toward me with warm, polite smiles, yet something about the night already felt unsettled. "How fast Leo is growing up. How old is he now, Betty?" I smiled and replied in a soft voice, "He just turned 7. Time flies." Then I turned to cut a small piece of cake to give to Leo. The boy looked up, his eyes shining with gratitude, but he immediately lowered his head again and continued pushing his toy car, as if only that toy was the place where he felt safe. Suddenly, Leo stopped, his little hands froze, and his round eyes looked at me with a seriousness that was not normal for him. I was a little startled. A bad feeling ran through my body. He grabbed my hand tightly. His little fingers were ice cold. In an urgent voice he whispered, "Grandma, I want to leave right now." His voice trembled as if he were holding back a fear he couldn't explain. My heart raced. I leaned over him and put a hand on his shoulder. "What's wrong, my boy? Tell me what it is." Leo shuddered, pressing his lips together. Then he whispered so softly that I had to lean my ear closer to hear him. "Grandma, you didn't look under the table, did you?" His words were like a cold knife through my chest. A terrible anguish began to grow inside me, making it hard to breathe. I tried to stay calm and stroked his hair, but his gaze, the panicked look of a boy of just 7, prevented me from ignoring it. "It's okay, my love. Let your grandma look," I said, trying to make my voice sound calm to soothe him, although I felt my own heart pounding. Carefully, I lifted the edge of the white tablecloth and looked into the dark space beneath. I saw the wooden legs of the chairs and Leo's little shoes swinging, and then I saw it, a small piece of paper, folded in 4, lying right next to Leo's chair. It was so small it was almost lost in the darkness, but its presence chilled my blood. Leo huddled against me, his little hand gripping my arm as if seeking refuge. I felt his agitated breathing. Every tremor seemed to tell me that something was very wrong. I crouched down completely, and with a trembling hand I picked up the paper. The people around us were still laughing and toasting, but at that instant my entire world shrank until it was just me, Leo, and that damned paper in my hand. I unfolded. The dim candlelight on the table was enough to read the scribbled words, "Table 8. Add shrimp to the child's serving." A few words, but they were like a direct punch to my heart. I felt the blood turn to ice in my veins, and the air get stuck in my chest. Leo is severely allergic to shrimp, something my whole family knows perfectly well. A single piece of shrimp would be enough to put his life in danger. Who could have written this? Who could be so cruel? On my son's wedding day, I squeezed Leo's hand, feeling his little fingers tremble in mine. I stood up abruptly, not caring about the surprised looks from the people around me. The elderly couple nearby stopped talking and looked at me with concern. I hugged Leo with all my strength, as if I feared he would vanish if I let him go. The laughter and music continued, but for me everything had become a heavy, suffocating silence. Memories of other times flooded my mind, carrying me away from that gleaming wedding hall and back to the years when our family was whole. I once thought my son's home would always be filled with laughter, but life, like a sudden gust of wind, extinguished that flame of happiness, leaving me with scars that would never heal. I remembered Maria, my first daughter-in-law, like I remember the morning sunlight streaming through the window at dawn. Her smile was tender and warm. She always made me feel like I was in the arms of a true daughter. Maria never raised her voice, never did anything that worried me. She was one of those people who, just by looking at them, made you feel at peace. I still remember those windy afternoons in the suburbs of Phoenix when I would arrive at Alex and Maria's little house. The laughter of Leo, who had just started to walk, echoed in the backyard as he chased a colorful rubber ball. Maria would be on the porch with a basket of freshly picked vegetables, smiling as she watched her son. "Mum, Betty, try the chili I made. See what you think," she would often say to me, her voice full of pride as she placed the warm bowl in front of me. I would sit there eating and talking with her about simple things while Leo crawled on the floor, clinging to an old toy car. But the most beautiful and also the most painful memory is the night Leo became very sick. He had a dangerously high fever, his little body burned, his eyes barely opening, with no strength left even to cry. Maria held him while tears rolled silently down her cheeks. "Mum, Betty, I'm so scared," she whispered, her voice trembling. I sat next to her, taking turns placing damp cloths on his forehead, trying to calm her. "Don't worry, honey. The boy is strong. He's going to be okay." But inside, the worry weighed on me like a stone. I stayed up with Maria until dawn when the first rays of sun appeared and Leo's fever finally broke. He fell asleep in his mother's arms. Maria turned to me, her eyes red but with a faint smile. "Thank you, Mum. Without you, I don't know what I would have done." I just took her hand and squeezed it tightly, as if to tell her that I would always be there for her and for Leo. I thought that little family would be happy forever, like a song that never ends. But then, one fateful afternoon, everything fell apart. The phone rang while I was washing dishes in the kitchen. The cold voice of a police officer came through the line. "Mrs. Williams, we regret to inform you that there has been an accident." I don't remember how I finished hearing the sentence. I just know my hands were shaking so badly that I dropped a plate, and it shattered on the floor. Maria was gone in an instant when a truck lost control and hit her car on the highway outside the city. I stood there paralyzed, feeling the world crumble in front of me. Maria's funeral was held on a day of torrential rain. The drops fell non-stop as if the sky itself was crying for her. Leo, who was only 4 then, was in my arms, confused, looking at everyone with his innocent eyes, not understanding what was happening. "Grandma, where is my mommy?" he asked in his little voice. I hugged him tightly, swallowing my tears, and whispered, "Your mummy is in a very beautiful place, my love." But inside, I felt shattered. Alex collapsed in front of the coffin, his shoulders shaking, unable to say a word. I knew he was trying to be strong, but his gaze was empty, as if a part of his soul had gone with Maria. After that tragedy, Alex changed completely. He buried himself in work, leaving home very early, and returning only when Leo was already asleep. I understood he was running away, trying to fill that immense void in his heart, with endless days of labor. But Leo, my poor boy, suffered the most. He started speaking less. His gaze was often sad, as if he were waiting for a miracle that would bring his mother back. I became his only support. I took him to school every morning and sat by his bed every night to rock him. "Grandma, tell me a story about my mommy," he would often ask, and I would tell them to him in a choked voice, about the times Maria sang him to sleep, or how she cut his fruit into little pieces to make his favorite dessert. Each story was an attempt to keep Maria's memory alive in Leo's mind and in my heart. Lucy, my adopted daughter, also became an essential part of those days. With her warm heart and skilled hands, she often came by with coloring books or cookies she had baked herself. Lucy loved Leo as if he were her own little brother. She would carry him, teach him to read, or sit for hours helping him with his clumsy drawings. "Look, Leo, your house turned out prettier than mine," she would laugh, her voice clear as a bell. But sometimes I would catch Lucy looking at Alex when he returned home late, exhausted and silent. It was a deep look that contained something more than simple sibling affection. I saw it, but I decided not to say anything. Perhaps I was afraid that mentioning it would shatter the fragile stability of what was left of our family. Alex's house slowly grew devoid of laughter, but thanks to Lucy and Leo, the family flame remained lit, even if only faintly. I did everything possible to keep that flame from going out. Still deep down I knew that both Alex and I lived with wounds that had never healed. Every time I saw Leo sleeping, I saw Maria's features on his little face, and my heart would ache again. The memory of that afternoon is still clear in my mind, as if time had not passed. I was sitting in my small living room listening to sparrows in the yard, my heart full of mixed feeling. It was the first time my son Alex was bringing Ava home to introduce her. I tried to open my heart. I tried to see this young woman through the eyes of a mother who wanted her son to find happiness again after so much pain. But deep down I couldn't shake a feeling of unease, like a cold wind that made me shiver. That afternoon, Alex arrived later than usual. I was in the kitchen preparing the tacos Leo loves so much when I heard the door open. Alex came in with a strange glow on his face. His eyes lit up like they once did when he used to talk about Maria with a passion he couldn't hide. "Mum," he said in a choked voice, leaning against the doorframe, "I want you to meet someone." I stopped what I was doing and looked at him, feeling a bit nervous. "Someone special?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Alex smiled, a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. "Yes, you're going to like her very much," he said confidently. I nodded, wiping my hands on my apron, trying to hide the worry starting to grow inside me. After Maria, I wasn't sure anyone could fill the void she left, not just for Alex but for Leo and me too. That night, Ava appeared. She entered my house in an elegant light blue dress, her hair styled in soft waves that framed her face, and her lips painted a gentle red that curved into a practiced smile. That smile, I must admit, was charming, almost rehearsed to please anyone. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Williams," she said in a sweet voice, bowing her head slightly. I returned her smile, invited her in, and served her a cup of hot, aromatic coffee. "Your house is so cozy," Ava said, her eyes scanning the family photos on the wall. One of them showed Maria hugging a very tiny Leo. Her gaze lingered on that photo longer than I would have liked. I wasn't sure I liked that. Dinner went on in an atmosphere I tried to make as friendly as possible. I placed the dishes I had prepared all afternoon on the table: tacos wrapped in corn tortillas, enchiladas with red sauce, and a fresh mango salad, Leo's favorite. Alex sat beside Ava, his eyes never leaving her. His happiness was visible in every gesture. "Mum, Ava works in marketing at my company. She's very good at what she does," he said proudly. Ava smiled and served me an enchilada with a delicate, calculated movement. "Mrs. Williams, this is delicious. You have to teach me how to make it," she said warmly. I smiled and responded politely, but a small part of me remained uneasy. There was something about the way she spoke, the way she laughed, that made me feel as though I were watching a very well-staged play. Leo, my grandson, was sitting at the head of the table, strangely quiet. He, who normally wouldn't stop talking about school, that night just picked at his food without lifting his head once. I noticed that he was avoiding Ava's gaze, as if he were trying to hide in a safe corner. Ava leaned over, took a chocolate bar from her purse, and placed it in front of Leo with a radiant smile. "This is for you. It's very good, Leo," she said in a voice as sweet as if she were trying to win him over. But Leo remained still, his little hands gripping his silverware. Then he simply turned his face away without touching the chocolate. I saw a flash of fear in his eyes and felt as if my heart would shrink. Alex frowned, about to scold his son. "Leo, what's wrong with you? Ava is giving you some candy." I quickly intervened. "It's nothing. He's probably a little tired." "Leave him be, son." Alex sighed, but didn't say anything else. He turned to serve Ava more wine, as if he wanted to lighten the mood. Lucy, my adopted daughter, was also at dinner. She sat across from me, eating in silence, but I noticed how her gaze darkened when Ava took Alex's hand under the table. Lucy has always been a very sensitive girl, and I know she loves Alex like a brother, but sometimes I wonder if that feeling isn't deeper. When Ava took Alex's hand, Lucy's hand stopped over her glass, and I saw her fingers tighten slightly. She didn't say anything. She just lowered her head and continued eating. But that silence was heavier than any words. I wanted to ask her. I wanted to understand what was making her sad, but I knew it wasn't the right time. After dinner, Ava insisted on washing the dishes, even though I refused several times. "Mrs. Williams, let me rest," she said with overflowing enthusiasm. I reluctantly agreed, and watched her go into the kitchen, roll up her sleeves and hum a cheerful tune while she cleaned. I must admit that she did everything impeccably. The dishes were neatly stacked, and the sink was sparkling. For a moment I thought, this girl seems very caring. But then, when I went out into the living room, I saw Leo sitting, coloring with his little hands clutching a crayon. Ava approached and sat down next to him, praising him. "You draw so well, Leo. What is it? Let me see." But Leo immediately let go of the pencil and leaned back with an expression of distrust, as if she were a threat. Ava glanced at me and quickly forced a smile, as if to cover up the awkward moment. "What a shy boy," she said in the same sweet voice. But I saw something strange flash in her eyes. Alex, meanwhile, didn't seem to notice anything out of the ordinary. He was busy serving more wine, telling funny anecdotes from work, and laughing loudly every time Ava told a joke. The evening ended with my son completely satisfied, seeing Ava off at the door with his eyes fixed on her as if there were no one else in the world. I stood there watching them walk away with a strange feeling in my heart, as if something wasn't quite right. But inside, I couldn't help but worry. Leo had never refused food in such a strange way. In the distance, I saw Ava's gaze turn to our table. The smile on her lips seemed to tighten for a second, just enough for no one else to notice, before she turned to continue toasting with another guest. I tried to dismiss my uneasiness, telling myself I was overthinking, but then everything changed in an instant. Leo, who was still playing with his toy car, pushed it too hard, and the toy rolled onto the floor. The boy quickly crouched down to pick it up, but I saw him freeze, his eyes wide, fixed on something under the table. I leaned over to ask him what was wrong when Leo pulled out a small piece of paper folded in four, with trembling hands and a pale face. He immediately clung to my hand and whispered urgently, "Grandma, let's go. Please, let's go now." My heart started pounding as if it wanted to jump out of my chest. "What's wrong, my boy?" I asked, trying to stay calm. But Leo's panicked look prevented me from doing so. Trembling, he repeated the question that chilled my blood. "You didn't look under the table, did you?" His words were like a cold knife that paralyzed me. I crouched down, lifted the white tablecloth, and my eyes scanned the dark space under the table. The little paper was lying next to his chair, a harmless object, but full of menace. I picked it up with trembling hands, feeling the world shrink around me, leaving only Leo, me, and that damned paper. I unfolded it. The candlelight was enough to read the scribbled words. "Table 8, add shrimp to the child's serving." A few words, but they were like an electric shock running through my entire body. I subconsciously crumpled the paper in my hand. The music, the laughter, everything around me seemed to sink into an abyss from which I couldn't escape. Ava, in her dazzling wedding dress, continued to laugh in a corner of the ballroom, raising her glass to toast with a guest, as if nothing in the world could worry her. Alex was busy taking photos with his co-workers, with a radiant smile that seemed to confirm this was the happiest day of his life. But for me, everything in that ballroom was a farce, a curtain that hid the terrible truth I had just discovered. I squeezed the paper tightly, feeling it burn my skin. Leo, the grandson I loved more than my own life, had almost become the victim of an evil plot right on his father's wedding day. I turned to Lucy, my adopted daughter, who was sitting next to Leo. Her eyes were filled with concern when she saw my expression. "Take care of Leo, please," I said, trying to stay calm, though I knew I couldn't hide the tremor in my voice. Lucy nodded, pulling Leo closer to her and hugging him tightly, like a protective shield. "Where are you going?" she asked me in a low, anguished voice. I just shook my head without answering because I didn't even know what I was going to do next. I quickly went out into the hallway, my legs heavy as if carrying lead, but my heart pounding, urging me to act. Near the bar, I saw a group of waiters chatting. Their laughter sounded like a painful contrast to the storm raging inside me. I recognized David, the young man who had brought the food to our table several times. He had a kind face and a friendly smile, but at that moment I couldn't think about that. I walked straight up to him, put the paper in his face, and asked in a firm voice, "Do you know who sent this paper?" David looked at the paper, and his face changed instantly. His carefree smile turned into an expression of panic. "My God, this is my paper," he stammered, his hands trembling as if he wanted to snatch it from me. "A woman gave it to me, and I accidentally dropped it when I was carrying the tray." His words were like a ray of light in the midst of confusion, but they also agitated me even more. "Who gave it to you?" I insisted, almost shouting, completely losing my composure. David took a step back, confused. "I don't know her name, ma'am. She just told me to give it to the chef." The paper didn't say who sent it. Rage exploded inside me like a burning fire. "All the more reason," I said, getting closer, my voice trembling with anger and fear. "You know my grandson is severely allergic to shrimp. A single piece could kill him." David turned pale, his eyes wide with horror. He shook his head frantically. "Ma'am, I really didn't know. I just followed the note. I had no idea about anything." His voice broke as if he too was trapped in this nightmare. The other waiters began to whisper among themselves, looking at each other with curiosity and concern. I squeezed the paper in my hand, feeling it burn my skin. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break everything, but I knew I couldn't let my emotions get the better of me. Leo was waiting for me, and I had to protect him. From inside the ballroom, the MC's voice cheerfully announced that everyone should get ready for the main course. His voice was like a cruel reminder that time was running out, and if I hesitated, a deadly trap could be waiting for Leo. I took a deep breath, trying to control the trembling in my body. I knew I couldn't stay silent. If I didn't act right now, I would never forgive myself. I returned to the ballroom with the paper still in my hand, irrefutable proof of a sinister plan. The ballroom was still flooded with candlelight, and the music of the jazz band mixed with the laughter of the guests. The waiters silently served the main courses, and the aroma of roasted meat and gravy filled the air. But for me, everything was afar. I looked at Leo, huddled next to Lucy, his clear eyes full of fear fixed on me as if I were his only refuge in the middle of the storm. I took Leo's little hand, feeling his trembling fingers in my palm. And then, as if driven by an invisible force, I stood up abrupt. My voice resonated clearly and firmly above the music and conversations. "One moment, please. Before we begin to eat, I have something to clarify." The whole ballroom fell silent, as if time had stopped. All eyes turned to table 8, where I was standing with Leo by my side, and Lucy, sitting with a spark of determination in her eyes. The clinking of glasses ceased, the murmurs died down, and I could only hear the pounding of my heart in my chest. I held up the paper. The words scribbled on it were an undeniable accusation. Who wrote this paper asking for shrimp to be added to the food of the child at table 8? I asked, my voice trembling with indignation, but forcing it to be clear and sharp. Whispers began to spread like small waves across a calm lake. Some guests looked at each other, shaking their heads with curiosity and confusion. I felt Leo's gaze fixed on me, as if he were begging me to do something to protect him. Alex ran from another table with a smile on his face that quickly turned to concern when he saw my expression. "Mum, what's going on?" he asked, completely bewildered. I didn't answer him immediately. I just put the paper on the table and pushed it toward him. "Read it yourself," I said in a harsh voice, although inside I was a mess. Alex took the paper. His eyes scanned the words, and I saw his face turn pale, his hands trembling slightly. "What does this mean?" he asked, stunned, looking at me, and then at Leo, as if searching for a logical explanation. Afe, in her dazzling wedding dress, approached, frowning with perfectly feigned surprise. "What is all this? Some kind of bad joke?" she said in a soft voice. But I noticed a flash of panic in her eyes. I looked directly into her eyes, my heart gripped by anger and fear. "My grandson is allergic to shrimp," I said, my voice trembling with indignation. "This is not a joke. This is an attempt at murder." My words fell like thunder, plunging the ballroom into a deathly silence. Some guests' mouths dropped open in astonishment, while others began to whisper, their eyes moving from me to Ava. Ava let out a forced laugh, a mask to maintain her composure. "Excuse me, Miss Williams, but there is no name on the paper. Are you really going to believe a story a child made up after finding it?" she said in a mocking tone, trying to make me look like a paranoid old woman. Some guests began to murmur doubtfully. "Maybe it's a misunderstanding. Who would do something like that at a wedding?" The blood boiled in my veins. Afe's audacity left me almost speechless. I wanted to scream, to tear off that wedding dress, and reveal the truth, but I knew I had to remain calm for Leo, for my family. Suddenly Lucy stood up, hugging Leo tightly, her eyes reddened and fixed on Ava. "That's enough, Ava." Her voice was cold but full of pain, as if she couldn't contain herself any longer. Lucy stepped forward and slapped her a smack that echoed throughout the ballroom. The sharp, resounding sound broke the silence and shattered the falsehood. Everyone froze, including me. Afe put a hand to her cheek, her eyes wide with shock, and then turned to Alex, sobbing. "You see? She's crazy with jealousy. That's why she's attacking me. What have I done to deserve this?" Lucy didn't back down, her fists clenched, her voice breaking with rage. "The only wicked person here is you. You wanted to harm an innocent child at your own wedding." Her words cut through the heavy air of the ballroom like a knife. Doubtful looks began to center on Ava, and I saw her freeze, her false smile fading. Alex was motionless. His gaze went from me to Lucy, and then to Ava, as if he were trapped between two worlds. "Lucy, calm down," he said in a trembling voice, but I knew he was no longer sure who to believe. The murmurs of the guests grew like a rising tide, carrying all eyes toward me, toward Ava, and toward Leo, my little grandson trembling in Lucy's arms. Afe tried to maintain her false calm, but I saw her hands shake when she spoke. "This is slander. I'm sure someone planted that paper to ruin our wedding." Her voice was sharp, but her eyes betrayed her panic, as if her perfect mask was starting to crack. I couldn't stand her audacity any longer. The anger inside me exploded like fire, consuming all my patience. I hit the table hard, making the glasses shake. "That's enough," I shouted in a voice so cold it silenced even the jazz band. "David, come here." The young waiter, David, approached from a corner, his face pale with fear. His eyes darted nervously, as if he were trapped between the truth and the storm that was coming. I showed him the paper, my voice trembling but firm. "Confirm it. Is this the paper you received?" David nodded repeatedly, stammering. "Yes, ma'am, it is. A woman from the other table gave it to me, and I accidentally dropped it while carrying the tray. He lowered his head, ashamed to meet my gaze. I felt my blood boil, but I forced myself to stay calm, knowing everyone in the ballroom was watching. Afer hurried to interrupt in a sharp, almost desperate voice. "You're mistaken. I don't know anything about that." But before she could continue, a weak, pain-filled voice rose from behind. Gloria, Aver's younger sister, burst into tears and stood up from her chair. "It wasn't my sister Ava who gave me that paper," the young woman said, trembling as tears streamed down her cheeks. "She asked me to give it to the waiter. I swear I didn't know what was inside." A murmur of astonishment swept through the ballroom. "My God, how is that possible?" I looked at Gloria, and my heart softened. She was barely 18, her red eyes full of confusion, as if she too were trapped in this nightmare. Afer turned abruptly and screamed at her sister, her face twisted with rage. "Shut up, Gloria. How dare you make up lies to harm your own sister?" Her voice was sharp, but I saw her lips tremble, struggling to hide the truth. Gloria backed away, shaking from head to toe, and sobbed, "I'm not lying, sister. I just did what you asked." Her words pierced Ava's falsehood like a dagger, leaving the entire ballroom in shock. I often watched them from a distance, Lucy and Leo, her teaching him how to fly a kite, showing him how to hold the string so it could soar high into the sky. Once, when Leo tumbled off the slide, Lucy rushed to him, brushed the dust off his clothes, and whispered softly, "It's okay, my love, I'm here." His bright laughter rang out, a sound I thought I had lost forever. That laughter healed wounds in my heart I hadn't realized was still open. Lucy wasn't just his aunt, she was becoming something far greater. She was filling the void Maria had left behind, becoming a second mother in ways that words could never capture. One night, when Leo burned with fever, I stood quietly at his bedroom door. Lucy sat beside his bed all night long, placing cool cloths on his forehead, while softly telling him a story about a brave sparrow that dared to fly through a storm. I noticed Alex watching her too. His eyes lingered on her with a complex expression, gratitude mixed with remorse, as though he was finally seeing something that had always been right before him. I didn't say anything, I simply withdrew, silently hoping that perhaps after so much pain, light was beginning to shine at the end of our family's dark tunnel. During one of our rare family dinners, as we all sat together over warm pasta I had prepared, Leo suddenly looked up, his clear eyes fixed on Lucy. His voice was soft but certain. "I want Aunt Lucy to be my mommy." The table fell silent. Lucy blushed and lowered her gaze, clutching her spoon as though it could shield her from the moment. Alex froze, his eyes glistening with tears, as if those words had struck the deepest chord in his soul. I placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered gently, "True happiness, son, doesn't come from a dazzling wedding dress, but from a sincere heart that knows how to love." Alex looked at me, then at Lucy, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a spark of hope in his eye. Time passed, and Ava vanished from our lives, like a poisonous wind that had finally blown away. Leo became his joyful self again, running, laughing, holding tightly to his red toy car and the drawings Lucy made for him. Watching him play in the yard filled me with relief, though a part of me still ached at all he had endured. One day Alex took Lucy's hand, standing before me in the living room. His voice trembled, but carried a new determination. "Mum, I know I made mistakes. I was blind. I put Leo in danger. But this time, I don't want to lose the one person who has truly been by our side." Lucy lowered her head, cheeks flushed, but a radiant smile spread across her lips. Tears welled in my eyes as I nodded. "Son, all I've ever wanted is for you and Leo to be happy." That night, after Leo had fallen asleep, I sat by the window, gazing at the silver moon stretching over the quiet street. Its glow reminded me that even after the darkest storms, light always finds a way to break through. Family isn't always bound by blood, I thought. Sometimes it is chosen with love, with courage, with sacrifice. The kite Leo and Lucy had flown still rested in the yard, a fragile symbol of new beginnings. I knew our old wounds might never fully heal, but together with love as our anchor, we would move forward. Through everything I learned this truth. Life brings losses we can never replace and betrayals that shatter us, but sincere love remains the light that shows us the way. Family is built not just by blood, but by the choices we make and the courage to protect one another. To anyone listening to this story, let your heart guide you. A single act of kindness can save a life, and courage can carry you through even the longest night.